This whole section is going to really involve the x-intercepts, which is the whole point of this graph, looking at the x-intercepts. But we're going to focus in on how do we find the x-intercepts with, guess what? Factored form. Now, we spent that whole last unit just factoring, right? So let's put it together. What does factored form give us? It gives us the x-intercepts, and let's explain why. So that's a zero product property. Let's look at a couple easy ones. So if we want to find the zeros of the function, let me just take this function here, set it equal to 0. And factored form highlights the zeros. Let me tell you why. You got to think what value of x would make everything 0. Now, if you were looking at, like this, if you look at this, it's not so obvious to see it in standard form. That's called standard form. But if we look at factored form, it highlights it. It makes it obvious. If we plug a 3 in here, guess what would happen? You would get 3 minus 3, which is 0. And then if you have to plug it into the other x as well, but it doesn't matter because you're going to get 0 times whatever this is. Doesn't really matter. It'd be 24 minus 8, so 16. But like I said, it doesn't matter because 0 times anything, guess what, is 0. So it just zeroes everything out. So you're trying to find the zeros once again. This highlights the zeros. So if you plug a 3 in there, boom, 0, done. Think about what we could plug into the other one. Same thing goes here. And notice there would be 2 zeros in a quadratic, right? Because it's a parabola, so it's going to cross twice. So what would I plug in right here to give me a 0? A 4. Because 2 times 4 minus 8 is 0. And it doesn't matter over here. 4 minus 3 is 1, but 1 times 0 is going to give me 0. So the whole idea here is that it highlights those zeros. So 3 and 4 are our answer. You're going to put the lesser one is 3, the greater one is 4. Be careful with that. This one's another obvious one. You could see 2, and this would be negative 1, because negative 1 times 3 is negative 3, plus 3 is 0. So negative 1's our lesser, 2 is our greater. Let's take a look at something a little bit more difficult, something that's a little less obvious. So we have x plus 1 and then 3x plus 4. Now I know negative 1 is a pretty obvious one. Negative 1 is pretty obvious. But what about this one over here? And it may not come to mind right away. So what you can do, worst case, if you don't just see them, like this one we just saw it. 3, 4, boom, it's done. But here, if it's not that obvious, you can take each factor, so x plus 1, set it equal to 0. And then take the 3x plus 4 and set it equal to 0. And then we're going to solve. So this one I get x equals negative 1, and we knew that one. Now what's greater, negative 4/3 or negative 1? Because we got to figure out which is the lesser value. Now they are negatives. So here's 0, here's negative 1. Negative 4/3 would be negative 1 and 1/3. So it would actually be a little more to the left, right? This would be the negative 4/3. So the lesser value is further to the left, the negative 4/3. And this would be the greater value, negative 1. Now, why is this called the zero product property? And I'm going to explain to you why. So let's look at a basic example over here. So just for example, let's just say we have x plus 2 and x minus 3. And let's just say that it equals 6. Well, we know that the 0 would be negative 2. But if we plug the negative 2 in there, negative 2 plus 2 times x minus 3 would give me 0. Well, I'd have to plug negative 2 in there as well, right? So plug the negative 2 in there. 0 times negative 5 gives me 0 times that is 0. So 0 doesn't equal 6. That didn't help us do anything. The negative 2 didn't tell us anything. It didn't tell us any solutions to this equation. And that's why it doesn't work if this equals 6. The zero product property, 0 times anything, the idea of zero product property, 0 times anything is 0. We can use this only when on this side is a 0. Because if you had, just like the other problems, x plus 2 times x minus 3 equals 0, then you can tell negative 2 is going to give the 0 times anything is 0, so that works. And 3, which would give me a 0 here, times anything is 0, also works. So it just highlights the zeros.